Hey y'all, this is Allison hanging out in my space to craft finally after a lovely week of vacation and followed by a week of flu. So I've been a little absent. I apologize. It's taken a lot of energy for me to come back up to my scrapbook room and get started, but I'm happy I'm finally here. So I am going to do a video and create some embellishments. And this is part of Ginger's Corner hop called Little Scraps, Big Impact. Let me explain my project. My daughter is away at college. She loves getting care packages. She complained that she only got 2 care packages last fall. So I want to make sure that she gets one after the first month of school or around the first few weeks of school. And it's been rough. They had, school shut down because of ice and stuff like that. So I'm going to be sending her a care package with a Valentine's theme. So I have this paper. It's my super cheap paper, and that's what I like to use to line the inside of the box for these care packages, because I don't expect her to keep the boxes. She doesn't have space for that. So I'm not trying to make these works of art. I'm just trying to make sure she knows I'm thinking of her and I've hand decorated it all in some way. So this is the base color that I'm working with. It was the only pink I had in that pack. And it's got a little bit of blue tones to it. So my thought was I'm going to make sweet tarts candy out of paper and sprinkle those around. Sorry, my dogs are going crazy. And then maybe a couple other pieces of wrapped candy or a lollipop and things like that. So I have some glossy paper here that I'll use for the candy, and I might even try and do some acetate to make a couple of wrapped pieces of candy. I don't know if that's what this big heart is for. I have my Creative Memories heart punch. I have some inks. I'll need to get some other color inks for these things. But that's going to be the color palette, mostly pinks and a little bit of blue and yellow popped in. So apparently I'm going to have to voice over this whole video because of my dogs. So hopefully you can hear this far, and I'll speed it up a little and voice over what I'm doing. All right. So I did a little playing around with my heart punch. I did, for each sweet tart, I'm going to use 2 of the same size hearts. And I did that in 2 different sizes. So I'm just inking the edge and doing just on the very edges of the paper on the top one, and then the bottom one, you can see I inked it a little heavier because I'm intending that to be sort of the shadow of the 3-dimensional heart. And then I have some Cricut gel pens, and I'm just writing some of the typical phrases that you get on sweet tarts. XOXO, you're cool. I'm trying to remember some of the ones from when I was a kid. Love you lots. Love you, things like that. So this one, I'm using some yellow. I do have some old yellow in this dauber. So it's not quite as light yellow as the ink pad. So and I'm also, sometimes I'm doing the second half to the right and the second half to the left, because these will go on different sides, sort of scattered around the different flaps of the box. When I do the box. So I'll finish the rest of those off screen, but you can see how I did them. Very simple. Now I'm going to do this lollipop. I used the glossy paper from scrapbook.com to cut the heart. Here I'm just going to round the bottom, and then I just did a 1/4 inch strip. If you have straws in your craft room, that might work here too, to be a stick, or if you have actual sticks, you could use it. I just made one because I thought I had straws in my room, but I couldn't find them. So I'm just making a little lollipop here, and then I'm going to use these super old Creative Memories silver letters and do XOXO across the heart. And I don't leave quite enough room on my first pass, so I do have to pull out my Creative Memories all-purpose tool to lift up those letters and place them back down so they're a little, so they'll fit a little better. I apologize for my voice, y'all. It's still pretty scratchy. I'm still coughing quite a bit from the flu that I had. Today was the first day that I sort of felt like I ate normally, and I'm feeling, I would say, about 90%. Still a little tired. Now, later I decide this needs a little more bling, and I go in with some Stickles glitter around the edge. My daughter loves glitter, and I realized when looking at these that I didn't really have enough glitter on things. So this is going to be the Linzer Tort, and I really should have the Linzer cookie. I should have inked before I started, but I did it after I did this first attachment. And it works out fine, but then I'm like, all right, I'm going to need some brown. And I had this vintage photo on my table, but that's not what I end up using. I end up using, I think it's antique linen. So I do that, and I'm like, well, that's going to be a little too brown. These cookies tend to be very, very lightly baked. So I've already got some brown in my dauber here, and so I'm just adding some of that antique linen to it, and it's just enough to add a little, and I am daubing it a little bit on the edges so that it looks a little toasty. And I'm going to pop that. I'm going to use some dimensional. I probably could have used even more thicker dimensional. I probably should have, because it wasn't quite as dimensional as I thought it was going to be. But I'm just going to make my cookie here. And then I want that raspberry jam to look a little jammier. And again, I'm going to add a little bit of glitter. So I pulled out a kind of a clear Stickles. And I add just a little bit of that. And then my glossy accents. And glossy accents is pretty cool because it will do a pretty good job of self-leveling. It wasn't a perfect self-leveling, but this was a really large space to use glossy accents. I haven't used that much in the past. I also didn't want it too thick, so I'm just taking the end of a paintbrush and sort of spreading that around so that it can self-level and fill in where the jam is supposed to be. And then I just set this aside to dry. It looks a little cloudy here, but it does
dry clear when it dries up completely. So actually really pleased with that. And then I realized there's one more thing that I wanted to make. This isn't going to quite be enough. I am going to pull out some things from my stash to add onto the flaps. You'll see that when I assemble them. I cut this strip to include, and then I just made 3 circles, also out of glossy paper, and then I took some pink stickles and just drew a little swirl on them so that they have a little glitter. They're mostly dry at this point. And then I cut up a Ziploc baggie, and I'm taping it on the edges at the back, and then I'm going to crunch it up and tie them to make them look like little wrapped candies. I was pretty proud of myself for thinking of this. I was going to use acetate, but then it would have been, they wouldn't have been at all dimensional with the acetate. And then I found this Ziploc bag in my little envelopes stash. I'm using some silver twine to secure them, to bunch them up. And I made it a little wider than the diameter of the circle so that it would look like it was sort of wrapped on the top of it and give it even a little more dimension. These came out really, really cute. I don't know if I would include them on a scrapbook page or something that I was worried about archival aspects, but on a card or something like this, something fun that doesn't have to be permanent, I think it's such a cute way to make candies.
So I'll make 2 more, but I won't torch you with watching me do that. So that, the Linzer cookie, a glossy lollipop. I'll have 3 of these little candies and a whole bunch of sweet tarts. So come back and join me, and I'll go through everything that's going in the care package and get the sides, the flaps decorated. Thanks a lot, you guys. This was a great way for me to get my creative juices flowing, have some fun, use up some scraps, and find my crafty mojo again. So thanks a lot for watching.